most everyone else is in round 3 playing in the playoff bracket, but our players on board 1 have finished 3 games. We are featuring New York expert Will Anderson and another New York expert, Joe Edley. Will is up in the series 2-1. He leads with a spread of 100 points. Will, he actually started playing Boggle when he was younger and came to the Scrabble scene from Boggle. He is one of our young, promising players. Joe Edley has quite the history himself. He has won 3 Scrabble championships here in North America. So he has the second most titles here, actually, only behind the legend Nigel Richards. So this is going to be a great match. We're seeing a generational battle here as Will is up 2-1 and really just needs to not lose this game by 50 points.
We see why it is that these guys have played 3 games, finished 3 games when everyone else has finished 2. Joe wastes no time getting down fauna, which takes an E, an L, and an S at the end of it. So it's a volatile play, but it's obviously get rid of 2 A's, get rid of your U, get rid of your F. It's exactly what you want to do.
24 points for fauna there to open up.
I'm just switching dictionaries here, and we'll see what Joe has.
So Will is going to unload 2 of his vowels here.
He would have liked to have gotten rid of that U.
Yes, so OE and phone here. And for those of you watching who aren't familiar with 2-letter words, OE is a 2-letter word that refers to a specific type of wind. It's not just any wind. It's a wind from the Faroe Islands.
Was it Faroe?
I don't know how to say it.
I don't know how it's spelled.
Oh, however you say it.
Let my wind go.
Yes.
The Faroe Islands.
So it's a very specific type of wind. It's amazing that some of these words are so pointed in their definitions. But yes, it's from that little island, a wind that's only seen there.
So it's a nice volatile play. He's gotten rid of some of his vowels. He's gotten rid of the dangerous fauna hook. He's given himself a nice balanced rack. But unfortunately, he picked a W to go with that U. Now, the only bingo in Joe's rack was sottedly, in a sotted fashion, which was not available. So he has decided to undouble his T and to get rid of the Y. Toy not only takes an S at the end of it to pluralize it, but it actually takes an O as well. And Joe has left an O on his rack. That was very intentional to give himself a shot at the double-double, hooking onto toy.
Meanwhile, Will has a rack that's not too bad here. The WU combination is one of the most dreaded in Scrabble, actually, so he's going to be trying to unload some form of that on this turn, ideally.
There are no 7s or 8s on that rack. Out, remember we talked before about over as being one of the compound words that we study in Scrabble. Over 3-letter words like overlet, overage, overage. We also study out words. Out, one of my favorites is out gnaw. Yes. And it takes an N at the end.
Out fawn as well in those lines is also a valid verb there. Probably the most ridiculous I can think of. No, there's actually quite a few, but yeah, the beauty of our dictionary is it's so broad.
If Joe had not played that toy play, I almost wouldn't be surprised if he would have passed. I don't know, but we might see something like wino and toy, or I think he's going to want to block that double-double line because he knows that Joe is just what's called fishing. He's getting rid of some tiles and saving them. There we go, wino, as expected. So he knows he needs to block it because Joe is setting something up. It's very important in Scrabble not just to be aware of yourself and your word knowledge, but also who you're playing and their style and what they're likely doing. You don't want to be paranoid about it, but you also have to be mindful of it. Now, Joe unfortunately picked up, I think, 2 E's. We talked earlier about how early in the game there are just so many vowels in the bag and that you want to get rid of as many vowels as you can and balance your rack if you have too many vowels.
Here, fishy, 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 fishy. That is definitely a fishing play from Joe. And we call that, as Robin explained, fishing just because it's really close to letters where you can use all 7 in one turn. Just a few too many vowels there. So Joe is unloading that O that he no longer needs since Toyo has been taken out and opted to keep 2 of the E's there instead, as his rack looks fairly promising on the next turn. he minimally has Elastace through the A and Fawn A, but there are likely better plays. Just haven't taken time to look through all of them yet. Meanwhile, on Will's rack, also looks fairly reasonably balanced here.
Interestingly, the computer, and remember this is not one that is doing multiple iterations, had preferred that Will play Woe above the OE in Fawn A and the OY, the Y, to make Woe and Oi and Woe. There's a lot of geeky people out there, myself included, who would spend a lot of time wondering whether, now if we were playing Collins, EE is a good word. Should Joe have played EE or OE? What's a better leave, LEEST or LEOST? And people will spend many, many, many hours trying to determine which of those is a better leave. Sometimes it's just a matter of preference. Maybe you just don't like LO. A lot of people don't. I'm not sure why, but LO is not a favorite leave for a lot of people. You can see it's a bit of a quirky game.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see now what the computer thought for Joe. They liked OE at L3, so that's fine. And what are you suggesting there?
Often when you're moving up another level in play from beginner or intermediate further up, we all got in that point where we fished too much when we were starting to play and didn't really think about scoring enough. But in this case, Joe really didn't have much of a choice because he had really low scoring tiles, so he wouldn't have been able to score very much in any other circumstances here. So OE actually would have been is the right play here for sure. But
both players are bingo machines, especially Will, especially when Will started. It was all about bingoing. Will has really matured and has developed his game, and now it's about developing plays and scoring and all that. But early on in the game, when both players are clearly trying to clear out troublesome bevoweled rack, not that that's a word, this kind of fishing is entirely expected and acceptable. Now, unfortunately for Will, he does not have a bingo that's playable. He has troubled, roundlet, and clôtured, none of which plays. So he's trying to get rid of that U and score some points now. He's left a very, very big spot where Joe opened up is a very troublesome spot. It could score a lot of points if you have the right tiles.
And interestingly here, Will has left 3 consonants and 1 vowel in his rack. Normally that would be a little troublesome, but he's expecting Joe to open the board with his next play, some kind of bingo.
Right.
And plus the A in Fawn A is already open, so if he didn't draw very many vowels, he would still be okay. But Will has drawn a bingo rack. He'll be putting down a bingo next turn.
He'll be putting down Atelier.
Yeah. But it looks like Joe is opting for Elastace.
Okay, and you can see how quickly these players are playing, and the reason for that is just because they just know their words. Nothing to think about. Udon was considered the best by the computer. Now, Joe had Teasels, which did not play. And Elastace was the only bingo for him. Interestingly, the OE hook that he created, he could not bingo on top of. The only word that he had with his tiles was toe, and the only word was Teasels. It wouldn't have fit. Oh, no, yeah, that's right. Okay. And he couldn't have played along the side of it either. He could have played wet and Teasels. But that would have created its own problem, sticking the E in front of the double letter going to the triple, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to give away points.
So Will is likely thinking about positioning here for his next play. He's going to use all 7 of his letters, certainly. But Atelier is one option already discussed. There's literate and laterite as well through the T and Elastace. He may be considering that instead of just Atelier, just because it doesn't offer easy access to the triple word score line on the top that Atelier and Row would. So he may be thinking about going down to the T and Elastace and playing there instead.
He has 4 bingos through that S. Realties, Leariest, Earliest, and Ateliers, none of which obviously plays. So he's not able to double his word. If he plays Atelier along to make row, R-O-E, he's going to open up a volatile row of the triple row. So it's to his advantage to really just play through the T. Nothing through the A. Nothing off the N. And he can't play alongside the OE either. So I think we're going to see a bingo through the T.
Yeah, I think Will's made the right decision here. Atelier just offers too much back to Joe, and that's one of the many factors that we talk about when we consider what is the hypothetical, theoretical best play. Literate just doesn't offer as many options back.
Now, Literate does take an S. Not everybody knows that. So that could be another reason. Rather than playing Laterite, which is a noun clearly and takes an S, it might be an intentional decision to create a spot to hook an S and perhaps draw a challenge. That's something that players do all the time.
Both of these players will likely also know that Literate actually takes an A front hook. So A Literate is an option that's playable here. So it may be that he was intentionally going for that over Laterite. Although no, E Laterite actually works. So either way,
either way, he was going to create a front hook.
Either way, there was a front hook playable there.
And I promise you that all these players both know it. Now, Will has the X now. That where Joe's going would have been a good spot.
So Joe is playing for points here and keeping OI, which isn't entirely optimal, but he is going for more points here, so that doesn't matter so much, because sometimes you just go for points rather than worry about what you've left.
You've got two I's, you have 4 vowels, and you want to score some points. You're not really going to balance this rack really well. In Collins, you have high-oi, which is a nice fun word, but we don't have that here. So if Will wants to take advantage of that spot next to the O and OE for his X, he's going to either have to play something like AXE, which takes nothing in front of it, on top of it. In Collins, it takes an S, but it doesn't here. So he can score, he can make ox, ax, and we for 43 or 44 points, 16, 18, 9, 8, 9, 43 points. But he'll be using 2 of his vowels, and he's got a J on his rack. He has to bear in mind that he's going to have to get rid of that J pretty quickly. And if he has too many consonants, it's going to be difficult.
Will is also going to be playing slightly differently at times than we might be used to in a game, because this is a match play format where he is currently up 2-1, leading by 100 spread points. So if he loses, he still could get in as long as he loses by 50 points or less. I'm not sure how the 50-point tiebreaker would work, but 49 points or less if he loses, he still goes through to the next round. So Will doesn't necessarily even have to win. He just, winning obviously is ideal, but he could lose by a very little score. So sometimes we may see him making plays that are safe and perhaps limiting options, whereas he might be more bold or open in other circumstances. So perhaps a play that would normally be considered best may not be best in the present circumstances.
And there's a whole there isn't a literature, but there should be, about how to lose by a little. When you're in a position where you don't have to win a game, but you do have to minimize your opponent's spread, there is a whole way of playing, and that takes many years to learn how to do that properly. I'm not worried about either of these players. So he's decided to keep the X spot for himself and get rid of the J first. The X is far easier to get rid of than a J. He's also blocking the literate spot to make an easy word off of it and coming down. So I'm sure all of those were intentional on his part. He also chose to play Janes instead of jeans, because it's less volatile for him to place the N over the double word score. If you place a vowel there like you would with jeans, you'd have the A there, then you could just hook a W or an H, for example, underneath it and score 25 quick points by going in both directions.
So Joe has drawn what we consider to be the best tile in Scrabble. That's a blank tile. It's that one that has the characters that spell out NASP on it on the far right of his rack. That is a tile that you can make any letter that you want. Joe has made a very interesting play here. He's played jig, which is one short of the triple word score. Yeah. He is doing what he can to try and generate a lot of points. He has the blank, and he knows that he needs to win and not just win by a little, but by a lot. So he's creating circumstances where he could potentially score lots.
I've never seen Joe do that.
However, Will takes advantage very quickly and just plays sax, which is going to score him a boatload of points. And he's not going to care that he's he's not going to care that he's left ARRT in his rack, because ART would be a little bit better than 2 Rs, but he's not too worried because this scores him so much.
This is a fantastic opportunity for people who have a bit of more experience with Scrabble, and of course for everybody, to see these players playing under different circumstances than normal. Normally you're looking just to block your opponent, to score, to whatever. In this case, Will has an objective to lose by as little as possible. Joe has to win, and he has to win big. So they've had to adapt in a new format that neither has a lot of familiarity with, figure out the strategy that each of them has to employ in order to maximize their chance of winning the bracket. And it's just fascinating to see how quickly they've adapted to it and come up with some ideas of what they need to do under very nerve-wracking circumstances. So kudos to both of them.
So Joe, with his rack, unless I'm crazy, I think groovier would be the only word that would play, but not on this board. The R is not in the right position, but groovier for sure would be an option if that R were in a different spot.
Groovier indeed is the only bingo in that rack. Whereas the only bingo in Will's rack is Trush here, neither of which is playable.
So Joe is still playing volatile. He's played Ogive and Vo, one short of the double word score, because he's just doing everything he can to create scoring opportunities for himself. And perhaps he's counting on Will to not know how to handle these situations.
I think the computer's going to explode trying to figure out the best play.
Yes.
The computer is just thinking, how could I best win the game? Versus what these guys are thinking is, how can I win or lose this game, under the best circumstance for me to win the bracket?
So Joe knows that Will has come from Boggle, where it's just all about word knowledge and seeing words on the grid and finding them. And in Scrabble, there's just a different element. And Joe would know that maybe Will, while he's obviously a very good player, Will may not have the experience that, say, Joe has with some of these game situations. Because Joe, for those of you who are just tuning in, we mentioned earlier, Joe is a 3-time U.S. National Scrabble champion. He is a legend of this game, really. There's only one player who has won more national championships than him. Also a legend, you may have heard of Nigel Richards, a bearded fellow who just won the French World Championship several weeks ago, and that was after learning the French dictionary in just 9 weeks.
Not just learning it, memorizing it. As I'm sure a lot of you read articles about Nigel, they were everywhere. Everyone said the same thing. Man learns dictionary 9 weeks and doesn't know enough French to give an acceptance speech. Nigel doesn't speak French at all, but does have an incredible capacity to retain words. Now, Joe's play of Ogive would have been even better, and it's if Earth wasn't there. Sometimes you need to make plays that split the board. They call them bunny ears, I believe, when you get to go in both directions. If Earth wasn't there, he would have given himself an opportunity to bingo along the top triple row and after Ogive and sticking an S onto that. That's sometimes what you need to do, is create 2 openings for yourself in different directions that your opponent cannot possibly block both simultaneously. It's not looking good. Well, I see a lot of wood words for Joe, basswood, and I'll have to think a bit more on that.
I'm looking at the chat feed here.
Joe's going to just what do I have to do?
So Will has taken the points here. Again, just trying to keep this lead up against Joe. Just to answer a question I've seen in the feed, yes, there are different letter distributions in other languages. That's because, of course, there are different frequencies of letters. We might not see the Z, for example, so often in English, but in a language like French, where a lot of endings to words are EZ as a conjugation, you're going to see the Z played a lot more often. So in French Scrabble, there's the Z is just worth 8 points, as an example, instead of 10, like we have here. The W we have in a decent number of words here in English, but in French it's almost non-existent, so the W actually goes up in value in French. So yes, to answer your question, there is a different distribution of letters depending on the language, and they are different values just based on the source language.
All right, so let's take a look at what Joe has. He's got Baywood. Right now he's looking to bingo. He can't play it under literate because EY is not a word. So I don't see any places for him to play a 7. Bearwood will not fit through earth, nor will Barnwood. And I don't think he's got a place for a bingo. He would have been able to bingo along above O-gives if earth wasn't there. So he's going to be looking to definitely get rid of WO at the minimum. So under O-gives is one place. I'm looking at what's left in the bag. There seems to be a lot of consonants left. So I don't think he's going to look to get rid of both O's. He definitely will not want to touch the row, the triple row next to safe. He wants to keep that for himself. And the best thing for him to do is to create another place for a bingo on the left side of the board. But that's not going to be that easy.
It would be really interesting if he decided to play obliterated for some reason and create an O or B lane, but there are not very many words that end in O or B, so he's probably not going to play that.
Right, he's going to play bow on top and score some points. I like B's. That's probably why I didn't think to get rid of it.
Yeah, so bow or bow, depending on which one you're referring to. Decent score here.
I don't know. I just feel like he's going to pick a Q. it's just not happening for him.
Joe's done what he needs to do so far.
Now, Joe once suggested to me, when I was having a bad run, that I was creating the bad run by how my negative energy as I put my hand into the bag. So I'm going to suggest to Joe right now that he use some of his advice, and let's see what he picked up. Yeah, he picked up some good rack tiles. All right, so what Will is doing here is not only scoring, but he's also rushing to empty the bag. What he's doing is he's in the lead. It's to his advantage to end the game as quickly as possible. So if he can play 5, 6, obviously 7 or 8 letter words is ideal, but if he can get 6 letter words down and empty that bag and also rush to get to the blanks, which are so far unseen, he's going to give himself a much better chance to win this game.
Doctoral is going down on the board. That's a nice play. He's also opening up a triple-triple in the process while doing that. Will naturally do everything he can to destroy that opening as soon as he gets his turn. But Joe has done what he needs to do and hope that Will somehow can't play there.
Now, some of you might notice that Joe transposed the 2 O's. There's 2 O's in Doctoral. Originally, he had the first O, the real tile, worth 1 point first, and then he switched it with the blank. And the reason why he did that is that you want to limit your opponent's ability to score. If Will chooses to play through that O, he can't play through the second O. There's really nowhere to go with it because the last stays is in the way. So he can limit at least 2 or 3 points if he triples the word, doubles the word, and then triples the word on the letter on the bottom. He can limit the score that Will gets.
No, Will could play Ponzu through the O and Doctoral and not even use the triple line at all, and that also still scores a lot of points. Leaves LEY left over on his rack.
And he's not worried about leaving a triple row open. As long as Joe can't triple, that's all he cares about right now. He's not worried about 30 and 40 point plays anymore.
In fact, I'm looking at the D, and I'm not sure I see anything that I would like over Ponzu.
Unpuzzledly. Let's see what there is with the D.
Meanwhile, Joe is having continuous difficulty. He has drawn very clunky, high-scoring letters altogether. So this game, I would say, even though he's just bingoed and come back close, is all but over.
Remember early on, I was at the first game when somebody played Vive, and I said, well, the Q's gone, the V's are gone, and that could those tiles could really limit you, especially when you're losing at the end of a game. Well, here we see perfect example. Joe is behind. He needs to get 1 point tiles, 2 point tiles in order to try to come back, and he's picking up that V late in the game, and it just drags you down because you just can't hook. V's don't make 2-letter words. You can't hook it underneath literates. You can't. It's just really, really difficult to get rid of a V in the end of a game when you're trying to catch up. I like Ponzu a lot.
Now, one potential problem here is Will actually plays both books, and Ponzu used to only work in the International English Dictionary, but has recently been added to the North American one. So
I'm not worried.
it's possible that he's seen the word but may not be sure if it's in our book here, because I have no doubt Will knows the words. But yeah, here you go. He has seen the word and opts to play it.
No
so.
doubt.
Ponzu goes down. It's
Blocks the triple, scores a lot of points, gets rid of the PZ. What more could you ask?
This is a great example, of some counterintuitive, examination of the board here, because most of us would be quick to look at the triple word score and try and play there. But in this case, Ponzu is a great play. Joe is instantly playing advice.
Upside down, mind you. He's not even turning the board around. 48 points, opens the board, these guys are playing fantastic. Well, you can't ask more of them. He's doing absolutely the right thing.
Joe's doing great, but Will has drawn a blank here at this point, so it's looking pretty good over on that side of the board.
Now, we will note that airing allows for a bingo starting with T or S. The blank is an S, as there's no more S's left. And now Joe has created lots of openings, but he needs to score, and he needs to bingo off that E to the triple, for example, to score a lot of points. And I'm seeing some heavy tiles there. KBD, only one vowel.
INUP.
Yeah, upbind with a K. That's not going anywhere. Now, score-wise, it's actually pretty close. So... all right, I'm seeing, there we go. It's going to be pretty difficult to look at a computer computation of this game, because really it's thinking completely differently than these guys. Doctoral was the only, was the right bingo to play, as was Ponzu. And I'm going to assume advice was correct too. All right, now we're up to date. And of course, he played. Now, QI obviously does two things. It gets rid of the Q, and it makes bingoing much more difficult for Joe, because it's blocking the lanes.
Will for sure has remotely through the E in advice next turn, assuming it's not touched, and I really doubt Joe will touch that, because he'll want to keep the board open. There are potentially better plays for Will. That's the first one that I see right away.
And also re-employ. Oh, employer. Obviously. I think employer might.
Oh, employer is better. Yes. Yeah. There we go. There is a better play. And someone has just pointed out that apparently Joe is LD today. Actually needs to be Edley for his name up there.
Oh.
Oh, interesting. Joe has played down underneath the Q.
Pick.
And in the process has blocked employer.
Now the only 7 in this rack is polymer, and PHE is not a word, so that won't be coming down.
Will, however, has picky and other things for lots of points, so I don't think he'll actually be all that upset about not getting to bingo here, because the board will be mostly shut down except for the one lane, and he'll be able to still score pretty well.
Yeah, something as simple as my. We just have to count how many vowels and consonants are left, but something as simple as MY. Nothing goes in front of MY. Nothing goes under MY, so he's not creating any lanes whatsoever.
Well, under my, you could do Mike with a C as the blank. Both of the regular C's are out, but Will has the blank, so he'd actually create a chance for himself to score that Joe would not be able to use.
Thank you for that. You're right. Mick was added X years ago. It's just one of those words that you either remember it
or you don't. Yeah.
You don't think of it intuitively. It's to do with cancer, I think, right, Mike? Or genes, or
it's some science word.
Some science word.
Our standard answer when we don't know is it's either a currency, a science word, or a univalent radical, and I think I've missed one other one.
Univalent radical. I'm gonna have to remember that one. Better than the Polynesian shrub. All right, so the situation is, I think there are 11 tiles left, or even less now, because I'm on the wrong page. Let's see what we're up to. There are 8 tiles left in the bag, which means, so here's something interesting. When you tile track and you know how many tiles are left in the bag, you always want to not always, but in most cases, you want to keep one in the bag in case your opponent bingos, because then you have a chance to come back and score a few points. So let's say your opponent bingos and gets ahead of you by 5-10 points. You want to be able to have one more turn to score more than that so that you can win the game. In this situation, if there's only one tile left in the bag, which I think is what's happening, if he plays 2 tiles...
Oh, this is a beautiful play. Merely scores lots of points.
Yeah, you might as well, if you're going to empty the bag, you might as well play as many tiles as you can, and Merely does that perfectly.
And I think Will's seen that the pool is not particularly conducive to anything for Joe. In fact, there are no T's left, so there would be no the plays. No S's left either, so he doesn't really have to worry about blocking the board. In terms of ends, Joe does have an end, so Toyon would be a worry. But Joe needs one more E for numbered, so that won't go down. Numbed he may just play to take points here. Toyon and numbed, assuming, yeah, the bag is empty. So Toyon and numbed is probably the straightforward play here, and will take this match and ultimately this series by 3-1.
Joe is known as our Zen master, so... He's taking...
Maybe he just didn't see numbed and Toyon.
Oh my goodness.
Perhaps he just doesn't care at this point. It's possible.
Apologies for the tiles left. As I said, we're not completely smooth here. We don't have everything going perfectly, and sometimes it's hard to see what's in the bag.
Yeah, so Will's going out with either food or fiat, one of the two. So Will takes this series 3-1. Don't have an exact spread for you, but he is going to be awaiting the other games. They are 1 game ahead, so there's actually 1 round left to go. No, two actually. They're in their 3rd game now. So this is a 4th round match, but there will be some other 4th round match live on board 1 for the next round. But we know that Will is officially through. He's the first through in any of the divisions.